It has been a while since the last time I talked about Christopher Dorner. As a matter of fact, the last time I did talk about Christopher Dorner was when he was an entry on my True Crime Sundays that I did back in April when I did speak about him. I think he was entry number 2 or 3. I want to say 3. I could be wrong. But Christopher Dorner is back in the news again. Yes, this man has not been in the news since 2013 when he did what he did uh, out there in California. Now, the reason why he's back in the news again is because apparently a couple of individuals, a couple of teenagers, acquired this man's firearm. Now, you're probably sitting there saying to yourself, how in the world did he or did they get a hold of his firearm? And it was only one thing that came to mind for me and the reason why they was able to get it. And that reasoning for me was it probably was sold at an auction. My guess is his gun ended up on an auction block a while ago. It got sold and it probably ended up somewhere, and now these teens had a hold of it. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna read this article coming from AP. It was posted August 14th, 2014. The title of the article is "Officials Probe Why Robbery Suspects Had Gun of Ex-LA Officer Involved in the 2013 Shooting Spree." Officials are looking into why 2 robbery suspects were in possession of a gun registered to rogue ex-Los Angeles police officer Christopher Dorner, who went on a deadly shooting rampage in 2013, federal prosecutors said Tuesday. One of the suspects, named Jesus Eduardo Rojas, a 19-year-old Venezuelan citizen, told police he had handled the gun and left it in the Airbnb, where authorities discovered it August 10th. The weapon is registered to Dorner, who killed 4 people in 2013. Hamir Mauricio Sepulveda Salazar, a 21-year-old Colombian citizen, and Rojas were stopped and charged with felonies related to an armed robbery. So they basically robbed the place where this gun was at. But like I said, how did the gun get to the location it's at? 9 times out of 10, it was probably put on an auction block and it was sold. It says Sepulveda and Rojas told investigators they were involved in an armed robbery of a $30,000 Rolex on August 5th in Beverly Hills. 2 days later, they said they took a Patek Philippe watch with an estimated worth of over $1 million, according to an affidavit. One suspect pointed a gun at a man sitting with his wife and 2 daughters on the Beverly Wilshires Hotel restaurant patio, while the other removed the silver Patek Philippe watch from his wrist. The affidavit said the crew had been surveilling the luxury watch for 2 weeks. Authorities are investigating how Dorner's gun came into the men's possession, said Justice Department spokesperson Sharon McAvoy. The gun was in a pillowcase on a bed where a witness told police Padron had been sleeping in the Airbnb. The 2 suspects charged Tuesday told investigators that they had been staying at the Airbnb and had photos of the stolen Patek Philippe watch on their phones. Dorner had killed 4 people, including 2 law enforcement officers and the daughter of a former LAPD captain and her fiance, during a week-long rampage in February 2013 that involved a massive manhunt and ended with his apparent suicide in a mountain cabin following a gun battle with police. Now, peep how they just left out the part about the fire in the cabin. They conveniently left that part out and they immediately went with, oh, it was an apparent suicide. Based on what we've heard, this did not end in no suicide. But let them tell it. I'm telling you that revisionist history is something else. Sepulveda and Padron are both in custody and made their initial court appearances Tuesday. They will be arraigned next month in federal court in downtown Los Angeles. Prosecutors said they were members of a crime tourism group. The groups live nomadic lives to avoid arrest by law enforcement, including by residing in Airbnbs and cash-focused motels, prosecutors said in court records. And that concludes that article. So these individuals, as you can see, they are from Venezuela and Colombia, and they're part of a tourism group, or basically a crime tourism group. So they just basically go and float from place to place, committing all kinds of different crimes. Nothing too extreme, like taking somebody out, but something low level that's just basically limited to robbery, like specified. Now again, they said the biggest question here is like, how did they get that gun? And like I said, they robbed the place of the gun, but that gun, I'm willing to bet, was put on auction. You know, a lot of police do have those auctions where they auction off different things, and I'm willing to bet that that gun was auctioned off, because why wouldn't they? They figure they'll get a lot of money behind it. I mean, you had this guy who went and did what he felt he had to do, despite how many other people might feel about it. Is what it is. It's a mixed bag depending on who you're talking to about this whole situation. And they figure, you know what, we might actually get some money out of this. Remember, if I'm not mistaken, what's his name, George Zimmerman, or as I like to call him, George Killerman, and how he was auctioning off the gun he used to kill Trayvon Martin. And come to think of it, speaking of George Killerman, wasn't he trying to also auction off bags of Skittles? Or no, he was signing bags of Skittles so he could try to make some money. And of course that ended up getting shut down when people got on him about that. And notice we don't really hear about him that much anymore, and I prefer for it to be that way. So my estimated guess, my hypothesis to this is that this most likely is that this gun, Christopher Dorner's gun that he used, ended up on the auctioning table, and it got sold for who knows what amount of money, and the next location that it ended up in is the same place in which it got stolen from. And another guess is the people who had it in their possession is probably not even the ones that bought it at that auction. Another question is, if this was sold in an auction, which I truly believe it probably was, is how long ago did that happen? Was it right after they got him? Was it a little bit later to try to throw off the scent? Either way, that's the only explanation I could think of that I can come to the conclusion as to how that gun ended up where it was. And then, of course, those robbers, of course, they wouldn't have no idea who Christopher Dorner is. They just saw a firearm and they just took it. So that's my assumption of it. And even when I was reading some comments under the article itself, people were saying the same thing, that they believe that this gun was at some kind of an auction. That's the only way possible that this could have occurred, for it to not be in the possession of the police or in any type of area that no one could get to it. And something else that I was reading also was suggesting that in some cases, when it comes to situations where there is a gun used in a major crime like a homicide or a murder, such as what was going on with Christopher Dorner, what they classified as, it tends to be customary that in a lot of cases they'll be destroyed. Now what I did was I went to Google and I just looked up California law to see what the procedure was as it pertained to that, and this is what I found. In California, law enforcement agencies can destroy or dispose of a seized firearms that are not released within 180 days of being announced as available. State law also requires that guns used in unlawful homicides such as murders can be destroyed or to be destroyed. Agencies can destroy the guns themselves if they have the time, tool, and manpower, or they can pay for a service. Acceptable destruction methods include melting, shredding, or crushing the firearm receiver. However, some police departments choose to resell or trade confiscated weapons for money, new firearms, or spare parts. For example, the Los Angeles Police Department still sells its guns. A joint investigation by CBS News, The Trace, and Reveal from the Center for Investigative Reporting found that more than 140 police agencies sell or trade their guns, which can then be resold by dealers. So based on this right here, they have the option of they can destroy the firearm or they can sell it. And as you can see and tell by this story, Christopher Dorner's firearm definitely wasn't destroyed because they were able to figure out that that was his. So they went with option 2 and decided to resell it or put it on an auction to make money. And of course, like I said, why wouldn't they? Because it was a high profile situation that was going on. So of course people were going to want to buy it because people out, for whatever reason it is, some gun enthusiast probably purchased it and the person who sold it ended up making some money. So with that being said, to answer to my question of how did they get the gun, I now truly believe without the shadow of a doubt, even with this right here, and now knowing it wasn't destroyed, it was definitely sold. They got a hold of it and they sold it. I'm not surprised by that either way. Remember, Christopher Dorner said that LAPD has some corruption to it, and the LAPD is in my top 5 most corrupt police departments, and I don't think it's going to move out of that top 5.